Hello and welcome to Breakfast for Pancakes. I'm your host, PK Sullivan. Today I'm revisiting one of my earliest videos and putting a completely new spin on it. How to make a panettone bread pudding was, I think, my second video ever. I was still learning everything about making videos, so please don't judge me too harshly on the quality of that content. However, making that video did get me thinking that a savory bread pudding would be amazing. And after a little bit of thinking, I realized that's just Strata. It's a classic breakfast dish, been around for decades. So anyway, we're making Strata. Strata is basically a savory bread pudding. It is served for breakfast. It's bread that's been soaked in a custard with delicious savory ingredients added. I'm going with cheese, bacon, and herbs. Let's get right to it. To make a savory bread pudding, you're going to need bread, eggs, milk, salt, pepper, fresh sage, thyme, cheese, and bacon. For some reason, sage has always felt like a breakfast herb to me. It's a key flavor in breakfast sausage, so that probably colored my perception. But for a long time, I found it hard to use sage effectively. It kept overpowering everything, even in the tiniest amounts. Thing is, that was all dried sage. That stuff is uncommonly potent and will take over a dish. Fresh sage is much more mild and can be used in greater quantities. Here I have a handful of sage leaves. Weighed out, they came to about 3 grams, and all minced is probably a few tablespoons. I'll admit, that's a lot of sage, but it works in this dish because of the richness of the milk, eggs, and cheese. Fresh sage can stand up to that without overpowering things. If you use dried sage, I'd start with a 1/4 teaspoon and adjust from there. Mincing sage isn't difficult, it's just a little fiddly. You'll see me run my knife along the length of the leaf, like slicing fish. That's because sage is delicate, and it has a tendency to get crushed and bruised if the full belly of the knife is used. Slice the sage into ribbons, then rotate 90 degrees and mince it off. Run your knife through it with a rock chop a few times to clean up any big pieces. The mince and rock chop will bruise the sage a little bit. You'll notice it turns a darker color. That can't really be helped, but by slicing carefully initially, you can keep the bruising to a minimum. I wasn't joking when I said Strata is a savory bread pudding. It's stale bread soaked in custard and baked until tender and delicious at the center. The only real difference is we're using cheese and bacon instead of sugar and chocolate. Since we know the ratio for a good bread pudding is 1 egg per cup of milk and 1 cup of milk per 4 ounces of bread, we can pretty easily get started. The loaf of bread I got was 1 pound, 16 ounces, before I dried it. 16 ounces of bread means we want 4 cups of milk and 4 eggs. Start with the eggs so that if any pieces of shell falls in the bowl, it's easy to retrieve. Crack the eggs into a large bowl and break them up with a whisk. Add the milk and whisk until everything is evenly mixed. Now add your sage, thyme, salt, and pepper, and whisk all that together. Set aside and let things meld while we deal with the bread. Start with a good bread. This is a loaf of penne francese, an Italian version of baguette. It weighed 1 pound at the store. It's perfect for this recipe with a nice thin but hearty crust and a dense fluffy crumb that will soak up the custard beautifully. Just like with the bread pudding, you want to chop up your bread into bite-sized pieces before you let it go stale or dehydrate it in the oven. Lay the bread out in a single layer on a sheet tray or in a roasting pan. Do this the day before if you're going to just let the bread go stale. But if you need to dry it out the day you're making the strata, preheat your oven to 300 degrees. Let it stay at 300 for about 30 minutes, then turn it off and add the pan with the bread. Let the oven cool down for about 2 hours, and your bread should be dehydrated but not toasted. Whisk the herbed custard to mix it up and add it to your bread in a large bowl or roasting pan. Toss to coat everything and then let it sit for at least an hour. The bread needs time to soak up the liquid, which is fine. That gives us time to work on the bacon and cheese. I'll be honest, it is incredibly rare for me to cook strips of bacon. Generally speaking, bacon bits work better for me in most cases. In sandwiches, on burgers, as a topping for a salad, or even a maple bacon donut. Give me crunchy bacon bits rather than a slice of bacon. The slice is either going to shatter because it's crunchy or slide out if it's chewy. Anyway, I've gotten pretty darn good at making bacon bits. Start by chopping up your bacon into lardons. Just take the stack from the package and use a good sharp chef's knife to slice matchsticks off the stack. Work all the way down the end. Over on the stove, add the bacon bits to a cold 12-inch skillet and turn the heat on low. The key to good crunchy bacon is to cook it slowly so you render out the fat without burning it. These bacon bits took about half an hour to cook. For bacon bits, it's actually best to crowd the pan. I know, that goes against common cooking wisdoms. But, as the fat renders out of the lardons, it will actually start to deep fry, which is great. By filling the pan with bacon and cooking it over low heat, the fat will render slowly, build up, and deep fry the meat. You want to stir the bacon regularly. This keeps anything from sticking to the pan and also helps distribute the hot rendered fat evenly at the beginning of the cooking process. The more evenly you cook the bacon, the better the end result. The bubbling of the bacon is the water being cooked out. This is what makes bacon crispy. You drive out all of the moisture. Continue cooking until the bubbling starts to subside and you can see the bacon has taken on that dark red color. Put a colander in a bowl and dump the contents of the pan in the colander. Don't wash the bacon fat down the sink. It's a good way to end up with clogged pipes. Pour the fat off into a jar or something later once it's cooled enough to handle but isn't hard yet. Let the bacon cool for a few minutes, tossing it occasionally to shake loose any more fat. Greasy bacon bits aren't good. While the bacon cools, go ahead and shred your cheese. I'm using Gruyère because it's sharp, nutty, pairs well with the herbs, and is a good melter. You can use another cheese if you like. Cheddar is a fine choice. Pepper jack would add some interesting heat. Smoked Gouda might complement the bacon in interesting ways. Go wild and experiment. Let me know how it goes. This was a 7-ounce block, but once I trimmed off the ends, I was left with about 6 ounces. Time to assemble the strata. Add the bacon and cheese to the bread and custard mix. Toss it all to combine. You want to evenly mix the bacon and cheese throughout. A cheesy patch here and there is fine, but keep in mind that for every place there's a big gooey vein of cheese, there's a sad barren patch bereft of cheese. It's all about balance. Most times I've had strata, it's been baked in a casserole dish and folks scoop out their own servings. I don't like that. One of the great things about this recipe is how the edges get brown and delicious. Anyone who likes brownie edge pieces knows what I'm talking about. No. There's a better way. These are French onion soup bowls. They're oven safe above 500 degrees and sized for a single serving. These are compact enough you can almost get an edge piece with every bite. The round shape means nothing will get caught in the corner. The smaller size means the strata can be mounted up proud of the rim to get a crispy dome of a top crust. This is my strata vessel of choice. It also makes great single servings for sweetbread puddings, apple crisp, and other casserole-like dishes. If you don't have French onion soup crocks, 12-ounce mason jars can work. These go into a 350-degree preheated oven until they reach 170 degrees Fahrenheit in the center, about 45 minutes. If cooked right and served at the right time, you'll get a great cheese pull as the Gruyère tries to hold the dish together. Once the strata is out of the oven, you need to let it cool at least 15 minutes before the crocks are safe to handle. This is the hardest part of the recipe, the waiting. After 15 minutes or so, you shouldn't burn your hands touching the crocks or your mouth eating the deliciously cheesy, delightfully crunchy, and decadently soft, savory bread pudding. Dig in. This isn't just a great breakfast dish, it's a feast for the senses. The top gets a little crusty and crispy while all the bread pudding underneath is soft and creamy. The bacon bits are little meaty, salty, crunchy treasures. The cheese adds body to the softness of the pudding and a rich nuttiness for depth of flavor. The herbs show up on the nose, promising a vibrant bite, then again at the back of your palate as the richness fades away. This is perfect for brunch with guests, and here's a little secret. It's even better twice baked. If you're having company over, go ahead and make this the day before. Fully cook the strata and let them cool to room temperature before covering with foil and putting in the fridge overnight. The next morning, preheat your oven back to 350 degrees. Load the strata onto a baking sheet, remove the foil, and bake them for another half hour. On the second bake, the tops get downright crunchy. The contrast between the crunchy, golden brown and delicious top and the smooth, creamy, custardy center is even better than when it was fresh out of the oven the first time. Oh, that was good. Thank you for watching. Always a pleasure to have you. and I hope you enjoyed the video. Strata is a classic breakfast food, but it doesn't have to be served just for breakfast. I'm going to be having the rest of these for my lunches over the next week or so. I'm looking forward to that. You could change it up and serve it for dinner, maybe add some sauteed leeks, onions, peppers, a little bit more veg to add a bit more depth and lighten it up a little bit. The cheese, the bacon, the bread tends to be a little heavy, but hits the spot when you're looking for a good breakfast. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really does help me out as a content creator. I'm working hard to bring you new and interesting videos every week. The show does have a Patreon. The link is down below. So check it out. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time.